I don't study in medical school. Instead, I learn. What's up, you guys? Rex here. So first of all, this video is not some how to study in some revolutionary way that isn't actually studying, or a look at me, I do these crazy tricks so I study in some weird way or barely study or any of that. Rather, it's a video that's sort of reflecting on how not great our undergrad system is of education, or even our high school education, and how it's really focused on performing on a test rather than actually learning material. And so in medical school, I've had the massive privilege, being a first-year medical student at Duke, that I really just focus on learning. I don't study at all. I absolutely love school. I wake up every day and my goal is, what can I do today to learn more that is getting me towards my goal of becoming an orthopedic surgeon? Compare that to undergrad, where I wake up every day and I'm thinking, all right, how do I get closer to getting into medical school? Well, the way I do that is get good grades. So my focus is get good grades, not learn useful things. Big difference. So why do I say getting good grades is a very different goal than learning? Well, first of all, getting good grades requires studying. And so I'm going to define studying in a very specific way here. I'm going to say studying is a highly specified preparation for a time-constrained knowledge demonstration. So what does that mean? When I say highly specified, I mean that it's only meant to learn material in a very specific way that is demonstratable on a test. And so it is some sort of preparation for a time constraint. I only have to know this on the day of my exam. I don't have to know it before it. I don't have to know it after it. So I can time my cramming to only know it for 1 hour and then word vomit it onto a page, completely forget it afterwards. And it's for a knowledge demonstration. And so it's for some sort of test that isn't meant to be an exam of what you have truly internalized and understood. It's meant to be what I can test you on in a 50-minute exam block or our 15-minute exam block. That is not learning, in my opinion. So learning is really where knowledge becomes understanding. That frontier is where real learning happens. It's where you internalize knowledge and it becomes part of you. So studying, it usually requires a lot of tricks to help you remember things. And so one example that I thought was a great example of studying versus learning is when we were learning the brachial plexus. So I learned about one of our review sessions that one of the older medical students was leading about this way and framework to learn the brachial nerves. And so I'll throw it up there, that it's very common to draw out this schematic. And this is really something that I don't see as very useful outside an exam. You can pull this out and really quickly sketch it on a scratch piece of paper in an exam, and it'll help you get a question right. But that doesn't mean you actually understand the material. And the way you draw this is very systematic and step-based. You only can really get to this drawing if you do the first part, and then you do this line, and then that line, and then you make the cross, and then you make an X, then you make a W, and you make a V, and then you get there, and then you trace your way back, then you label it, and then you can get the question right. And you'll get all the questions right. That's fine. Now, this drawing isn't really something that's going to be helping you when you're a doctor and seeing patients. You just have to sort of know, because it's part of you, that, oh, musculocutaneous is there, then the median nerve, it goes over there, and then the ulnar nerve down here, and then you got around the back is the radial nerve, and then the axillary nerve is going around the back, and it's innervating these muscles. And so I didn't use any tips, tricks, techniques to learn the brachial plexus in some creative way. And truthfully, that probably is why I might have got some questions wrong on the exam, that I didn't know every single little branch. But what I do know is stuff that I can retain and recall in the same way. You know, this is a biceps. Anyone I'm talking to probably knows this is a biceps, this is a triceps. You don't need to have some mnemonic device that's creative to know, oh, well, the bi is 2, and that's in the front because the toucan and this, and then tri is like a triceratops, which makes you run backwards. Some contrived sort of rhyme or reason. It's just, you know that this is your pecs. You just know these are your abs. You know what your quad is. You don't know this because some trick of studying. You know this because you've learned it. It's something that's become part of you, and it's just something you can instantly recall. And so when I talk about internalizing, I really immediately think of, classic YouTube. Hopefully you guys get this reference of, this is an Aspen. You can tell it's an Aspen because of the way it is. So that's good old nature walk. I'll link that down below because that's classic YouTube. Everybody should watch. And it reminds me of this one professor I have, who I do like, which hopefully he's not watching. Just kidding. He knows I like him. He commonly talks about how sort of the just so stories aren't really great answers for a teacher. And that's true. It's not a great answer. But when it comes to being a doctor, there has to be a real balance of having a just so, but also having an understanding. I think it's important to have both. You should be able to really understand why things are the way they are, how they come to be. But it's also very functional to be able to say, oh, this is this way because just so. That's just how it is. I know this is an Aspen because of the way it is. I can identify some radiograph because of the way it is. I can identify some disease because of the way it is. Just because it's so part of you, it's instantaneous. That being said, you understand it enough that you can then explain it. But really part of learning and being functional with it is having both that just so and that understanding. I think a great example of this, which hopefully a lot of you can relate to, is knowing how to type. So I was really lucky that I went to a public school that forced me to type, and then I switched schools, and then I had to learn to type again. So I'm very lucky because of circumstances outside of my control. I know how to type well, which means I can do well on Casper, that's another rant for another time. Casper is a stupid exam, but I can type well. And the reason I can type well is because I've memorized the QWERTY keyboard in a functional way. If I was told to draw out the QWERTY keyboard as if I had studied it for an exam, it would take me a good amount of time to do Q, W, E, R, T, Y. And I can't even think off the top of my head of what is next to Y. But I have functional knowledge that I have learned that allows me to type with 100% accuracy at 80 words a minute, because I just immediately know that I need to press this button, Y, T, A, B, C. And like the fastest way for me to do that would just be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I could draw out a keyboard eventually. But I have this internalized knowledge, not because I sort of use some tricks to get there. I don't have to think when I'm typing of, all right, I need to type the letter A and then come up with some mnemonic device to know that it's my pinky. I don't have to do that. It's just inherently part of me. And it always will be part of me, and there's nothing I can do to forget it, and it's not dependent on some rhyme, creative reasoning, or anything like that. No mnemonic devices. It's just part of me. That's true learning when you have really hardwired it into your brain. And so I'm really making this video now because I'm really thinking of it now that we're learning the cranial nerves, because that is such a classic example of you have these 10 cranial nerves and you just have to know them. And so there's all kinds of different mnemonic devices, and I definitely used a mnemonic device to know them back in undergrad. And so I had something, it was like O to touch and feel, and then it probably was some like sexual stuff later on down the road. But the point is, I studied that and I knew it for the exam. I got the question right. I probably would not have got that question right 2 days after the exam. I completely forgot the mnemonic device. And on that exam, if I was asked, what is cranial nerve 10? It's vagus, by the way. I would have to go through and write out my 10 nerves, eventually get to number 10, and then I'd be able to answer the question. And so I am trying to truly learn the cranial nerves in medical school now. I am not using any mnemonic devices. I refuse to use a mnemonic device. We'll see if this changes next semester, but I've not used a single mnemonic device yet in medical school, and I haven't tried to memorize anything. I've just tried to learn things. And so right now, I can just go cranial nerve 4, trochlear, cranial nerve 2, optic, cranial nerve 11, spinal accessory, cranial nerve 7, facial, cranial nerve 5, trigeminal. And similarly, I just know where the cranial nerves exit the brain. Vestibular cochlear, that's cranial nerve 8. It goes out the internal acoustic meatus. Cranial nerve 12, that's the hypoglossal. It goes out the hypoglossal canal. And it also comes out of the brainstem between the olive and the medullary pyramid. I just know this. I don't have any sort of trick that was able to get me there, but just thinking about it and being active with the material. And it's great in medical school that I have awesome faculty who is teaching things in a way where we see the material over and over again and we dissect it with our hands. And I have touched a human brain and touched each of these nerves and seen where they came out of the brain and seen where they have then innervated what they do. And so I also don't have to memorize some sort of, there's some other mnemonic device of like, is it motor, sensory, or both to like go through that. But I just know that like the nerves that are like special sensory, I just know that's 1, 2, and 8. Olfactory, optic, vestibular, cochlear. When it's the nerves that are strictly motor, I just know that's the motors that do the eye. 3, oculomotor. It does basically all of the eye movements besides what the trochlear does, which is rotate and bring down. And cranial nerve 6, abducens, that takes it outward. I just know that, all right, 3, 4, 6, those are strictly motor. Also spinal accessory, cranial nerve 11, that's your trapezius and your sternocleidomastoid. Cranial nerve 12, hypoglossal, that does your tongue movements. Those are the only motor ones. All the other ones besides 1, 2, and 8, which are special sensory, have some mix of both. And I could tell you what all of those do. Not from any sort of trick, tip, memorization, not from studying, never studied. Instead, we're just learning things. And why is this all possible? Pass-fail. Pass-fail is the greatest thing ever. I don't have to stress about exams. I don't study for exams. I learn for exams. I spend all day learning, and I will probably say at some point studying, but it's not the kind of studying I did in undergrad where I'm trying to do well on a test. I'm saying, okay, what is an exam? Oh, that's in a deadline when I'm telling myself I'm going to try to learn this material to the best of my ability for the rest of my life. Not for this exam. I'm not doing it for this exam. I'm doing it for my patients. It's totally different than undergrad, and trust me, it is so much more fun. So if you are in undergrad, I can't say that this is necessarily the best way to approach it. It's part of the game. It's the American education system and sort of the worldwide education system. You have to get that good GPA, and that's part of playing the game. You got to study. But no, if you're going to medical school, it can be better. If you go to a great med school that's pass-fail and you have awesome faculty, you can just go in and say, I don't need to study anymore. I'm here to learn. I'm here for my patients. We're going to have fun. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I'd love to hear about them down below. If you like the video, dislike the video. If you dislike the video, if you want to hear more of my thoughts, more of my journey as I'm becoming a doctor slowly but surely, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell. And until next time, don't be ordinary. Go be great.